It's really my great pleasure now to introduce Sweden's Minister for the Environment, Lena Ek. Please give her a warm welcome. Hi, very nice to see you.
Nice to see you.
Hey, Lena. And she's going to give us a few introductory remarks.
Thank you very much. Thank you for inviting me. Thank you, Johan, for a wonderful presentation, as always. I've now been Minister for Environment for 1.5 years. And it's one old-fashioned English word that I've used many times, and that is flabbergasted. I've so many times during these 18 months been flabbergasted about how rare it is with interconnection between environmental experts and experts on human health and medicine. And I think it's very tragic. It's very tragic when it comes to biocides, antibacterial liquids that's used and bought by health organizations when we have the fight with resistance in bacteria, endocrine disruptors. Why is science silent in these areas? Air quality and climate change. Just to mention a few areas where we ought to cooperate so much more. And to take the area of air quality that is closely interconnected with climate change. We have in traffic, we have a zero vision in Sweden. We have premature death on roughly 300 people per year, not counting injuries, of course, and personal tragedies. People who die prematurely by air quality is more than 3,000, 10 times more, and it's very seldom discussed. Doctors ought to engage in politics, ought to engage in policy shaping, in planning, in municipalities, and there shouldn't be, first of course we should bring the levels down, but to have schools, hospitals in heavily trafficked areas is so counterproductive and so stupid, utterly stupid. When we talk about climate, and we will have a discussion very shortly, and the program is delayed, and I'm on my way to St. Petersburg, so to meet Medvedev on these very issues. Climate change. The short-lived climate pollutants, those who live in the atmosphere for weeks or maybe a year, not in decades as the long-lived climate pollutants, also affect human health. And if we look globally, it's more than 3 million premature deaths. And if we could combine measures to bring for example, big particles, methane, depleted ozone down, we will have much better health to lower cost, much better, higher life quality, longer life expectancy rate, and of course also higher yields from agriculture, which helps us to bring down starvation. And February last year, we launched this Climate and Clean Air Coalition on just these short-lived climate pollutants. Roughly 1/3 of the effects that Johan has been talking about and explaining. And we are now more than 50 parties in this coalition. 30 countries, including US, the OECD countries, like Japan, but also very poor countries like Mali, like Indonesia on its way up, but Bangladesh. And that's because we have been able to find the win-win situation when it comes to health, food production and climate. And this is where we can help each other. And it's not only a topic about Bangladesh or far away. An increase of 1 degree in average, Swedish summer, would immediately affect death rates in Sweden. So if you're planning in future to have vacation in July, forget it. Because that would be one of the busiest times in our Swedish hospitals. So climate effect is not something distant or far. It affects us all, and we have to help each other out on this. And that would be my 3 minutes.
Okay, very good. Now, Minister, Lena,
yes.
if I may, can
Absolutely.
we've not met before, so it's a bit rude of me, but can I ask you a personal question?
No.
I'm going to ask you a
Of course you
personal
can.
question because we're amongst friends.
Yes.
And nobody's tweeting or
No, no.
blogging. It's okay. Now, how do you get on with the Prime Minister?
Good.
Is he good?
Yeah.
Does he listen to you?
Yes.
Because our last Minister for the Environment's in prison now in the United Kingdom. He had a little altercation in a car episode and ended up in court. And the problem in the UK, which I'm sure is very different here, is that our Minister of Environment...
I keep to speed limits.
Absolutely. And your husband doesn't take your points. The problem in the UK is that the Minister of the Environment is not taken as seriously as, say, the Minister of Defence, or the Finance Minister, or even the Minister of Health. How do we get to a place, to take up Johan's conclusion, where we can truly integrate these issues that you've touched on into our political vision for our country, for our region, for our world?
Well, I think the British problem is a very special, private, personal problem. But seriously, I think as long as science is silent, there's a problem. You have to speak up, you have to take action, you have to understand that this is maybe the biggest question that we have to face together globally, but also nationally and locally. So every Prime Minister acts on facts. Provide the facts. You have them on health, medicine, public health, precautionary measures. Because facts is what is what's speaking. And it's you mentioned the Minister of Defence. Well, imagine what will happen with security issues and defence budgets when there cannot be food produced around the mid-earth, where we have the normally the heaviest, most of the production of wheat and rice. If the deserts are growing at the same time as the population is growing, of course it's a security problem. And I was in a panel at the UN with the Minister of Defense from Germany. When I go to US to discuss climate, the panels are shared not by journalists or researchers, but by 4-star generals. The American fleet is planning to move from fossil fuel to alternative fuels for security reasons, security of supply. There's a reason for that. So there is, I think the problem is now so big and affecting all policy areas, which means that we also have to take action in all policy areas. In Sweden we work with the Roadmap 2050, sector by sector, to see how we can address these problems. The problems that the climate issue will cause and is causing right now. We're working with Johan and I together on the Climate and Clean Air Coalition, a lot of Swedish researchers. Svante Arrhenius was the first Nobel Prize winners before, I think it was 1890, he wrote about the climate issue for the first time.
This is good. We need to get the facts, and we need to get the facts to people who make decisions, such as yourself, such as Prime Ministers, to Ministers of Finance. So let us say that it seems, because we're clearly not making progress in our political dialogue, if you look at the progress globally towards a solution for climate change, we're just not there. So Johan, we in the knowledge community, in the scientific community, we're not doing something right here. We're not getting your 369 message to the people who matter. How can we do better to get the evidence into the hands of decision makers?
Well, I think the first thing to do would be to have given me 15 more minutes, because then I would have been then I would have been allowed to go from diagnostics to solutions. And I think that's the biggest scientific mistake. And Lena, you've often challenged us there. I mean, I think your initiative of looking at the benefits of action is really the main story today. To say, we have tremendous risks. And these risks have often been portrayed as kind of environmental risks. Now we're seeing that the planet is sending invoices back to the economy, which means that suddenly these are economic risks. But the beauty is that we have so many solutions that shows that big business can actually earn more money by moving faster towards energy efficiency, towards climate smart solutions, towards a low carbon economy. And I think if we can go, the diagnostics has to be there. We have to be putting all the cards on the table on the risk we're facing, but then also show stories of solutions. And there's so many of them. So that's one. And then the second is I really think that the whole health, environment, development nexus is a very powerful story, because everyone is concerned about health, and health is so immediate. Some of these environmental issues are perceived as being far away in the future.
Lena.
Yeah, I think very often when I mean, the problem seems so big, and it's very easy to despair. And if you haven't got the last 15 minutes, you don't see the solutions. But there are solutions, absolutely. To crack down on the United Nations is a bit unfair, because that is the way of lifting the lowest common denominator. I mean, a big UN negotiation round, like in climate, is all the member states in the United Nations, democracies and dictatorships, that has to agree. Imagine the difficulties. But it's still producing small steps forward year by year to lift the lowest level. But we have to combine this with measures or agreements or whatever we can, supportive actions. So we mentioned, both Johan and I, the Climate and Clean Air Coalition, where there's a win-win solution that we've created, and a totally different working method you provide when you enter into the coalition. And now we're pressuring Russia that want to come in, but they have to agree on a work plan. Otherwise, they're not allowed to enter, which is a bit different from the UN negotiations. Also, benefits of action. A big report, 5 countries. Sweden is the driving force on this. But we will work together with the World Bank and IMF, International Monetary Fund, for example, and 4 out of the 6 highest ranking environment think tanks. Johan is participating in this work as well, to provide a benefit of action story or report, really, a Nick Stern 2.0 on benefits of action. So there's a lot of things to do, but also it's not only like politicians going here and there, negotiating and agreeing and working all the night through. It's also personal. What do you do as consumer, as an individual, all the time? Consumer patterns, how do you travel to work, what do you do as professional when it comes to climate discussions and health, like your responsibilities. So, but we had a training match. That's the ozone layer. So I think it can be done, and it can be done with a better life quality, not only for the rich, but certainly for the poor, and that is what's driving me.
So let me accept the 2 gentle criticisms that we in the scientific community haven't done enough to think about solutions, absolutely, and solutions lie amongst all of you. It's not just amongst political leaders, but political leadership is important. And it does mean taking on interests that will challenge you. A year or so ago, we published a series on the intersection between health and climate change. And one of the messages that came out of that work was that if we reduced meat consumption to roughly about 80 grams per day, that would be an important part of a multi-sectoral action to address some of the forces driving climate change. And we had our Minister of Health, Andy Burnham, come to the launch of this event, and he said it was the most important event he'd ever been to. And he said this, and it went out on the media, and then the National Farmers Union came along, and they were up in arms, and they said this was scandalous that the United Kingdom government was taking on the agriculture industry. And by the end of the day, he'd retracted his statement, and clearly our series was in oblivion. Leadership. Leadership means that when you have the evidence, you have to act and you have to challenge forces who don't want to hear the evidence. There is an important issue there. Are you ready to do that?
Well, we do it daily. That's it's a very good question. You could add car industry, mining industry, building industry, and keep on going. But also here, science and innovation is part of the answer to the riddle. Huh? You can today visit 5-story buildings in Växjö, south of Sweden, that provides electricity into the grid. I know that heavy truck makers are now building or planning for trucks that gather energy and could support a building site for a whole day from the car. It turns the concept upside down. So what we have to do is because I don't think it's possible to get the necessary majorities if this means that you have a very dreary life and you can only take a cold shower, never a hot shower or a warm shower. So we have to also work with innovation and with industry. And I would say that industry is half white, half black in this. Half modern, half not so modern.
Okay. Nisha's got some questions.
I have a question which fits in quite nicely in the discussion you're having here about vested interests and how you challenge them. And it's from Sabina Valois. I hope I've got your name right, Sabina. And it's saying, okay, we have these obstacles, but what is the greatest obstacle to trying to meet these goals of alleviating poverty, improving health, while at the same time helping the environment?
I would say the human mind.
The human mind. Expand.
I was hoping you would say that. When you work with changes in leadership, if it's a hospital or a company or a political party or a country or worse, bigger, there's always a group of 6 and 7% that understands and take the appropriate actions. And when they do this, the next group, 10% of the population, sees what they are doing, understands why they do it, and act, and then you have a change in the public mind, and you get the majorities you need. That's why it's so important that politicians speak up, that scientists speak up, to get these critical groups. Because when you have a big majority that changes consumption pattern, whether it's food or transport or how many plastic toys does a kid need to be happy, things like this, then everything else follows. So for me, it's the human mind that is the riddle. And if you look into economic history, you could see this is very interesting.
Biggest priority, yeah.
Yeah, well, I tend to agree on the human mind, but I would say that we cannot wait for the human mind to change, because that takes a long time. So that mind shift will simply bring us too close to very dangerous risks. So therefore, I tend to come back to the issue of leadership. We need some fast-track action at the global scale. So we need to very, very quickly. I mean, the 3 most important decisions would be: 1, to take away the $600 billion per year subsidy for fossil fuel energy and get a carbon tax in place. That would be a, we're in Germany today. Angela Merkel's biggest problem is that her reform on renewable energy is doing too well. She's going too fast towards a renewable economy. The second most important question is to halt biodiversity loss once and for all, and I think Sweden is actually doing some good work there. We simply need to preserve the remaining beauty on Earth to serve humanity. I think the third one is really about this interconnection, to say environment is not a problem, health is not a problem. These are the basic functions for well-being. So stop talking about growth as this kind of economic engine, to say what kind of life do we want? And that life depends on a healthy planet, and that's it. It's very simple.
So this is a question for your Minister of Finance, because all countries we're seeing today are putting economic growth as their top political priority. But what we've heard already this morning, and what we know from economic science over the past decade or so, is that this quest for the holy grail of maximum economic growth will not deliver sustainability. These two ideas are not mutually compatible. How do we address the fact that we have these two visions for a future? A vision which will destroy the planet for the majority while leaving us happy and alive, or a vision where we say we have to make sacrifices because for a sustainable future, that requires a little humility, a little altruism, a little belief in cooperation and an intergenerational, interdependent vision for our future. And that's where Sweden can play such an important role, yes?
Yes.
Yes.
So what's the next step that the Swedish government will take to make this vision a reality? In the last 60 seconds.
And you talk about 15 minutes. This Climate and Clean Air Coalition, where I actually formed the working methods when I became a Minister of Environment, has gathered more than 50 parties on exactly this. The work is on track, and I think that is a relief to see that there is work going on, serious work going on. The second thing that we're planning now and has worked with for half a year is a huge global report on benefits of action to persuade people, using Johan's facts, and persuade industry, politicians, decision makers globally to act. And I think that has been for 1.5 years. I think that's pretty good. There's more to come.
Prime Minister? You? Could the Minister of the Environment become Prime Minister in Sweden?
Absolutely. We have election next
That should be in the Stockholm Declaration. Please thank our two wonderful speakers.